Okay, hello everyone. I'm Adam Abraham, and this is my partner Jody Spencer. We're the President Water Company, coming to you from two of the four or however many corners there are of the planet. Me in Washington State, and Jody in Western Australia. And actually, as long as we've been together as a team, this is the first time, no, it's the second time we've been on camera together, but the first time we actually want to do something to start addressing questions that come up regarding using vortex generators. We talk about it all the time, and questions come up, and we write them down, we answer questions, but we don't do this. And I think we're going to be doing more of this. What do you say, Jody?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a good idea. We've trotted out the same conversation a lot of times. It'd be nice to have it online so people can access it whenever they feel like viewing it at their time, rather than having to reach out to us one by one. So it's probably a good idea.
Absolutely.
And well overdue.
So maybe other things may come up, but what's on our mind today is a question, subject that comes up frequently, and that has to do with vortex generators and water softeners. Some people wonder, do they need to use water softeners when they have a vortex generator, or what is happening? Is that the general gist of the questions that you're seeing, Jody?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of questions around water softeners. Obviously, there's some benefits to having a water softener. Not that I can see many. Once we talk about what happens inside a vortex generator as opposed to the issues regarding ionic exchange, which is what happens inside a water softener. I think that using a President Water vortex device makes a whole lot of sense on so many levels. And you want to get into that?
Yeah.
Into that now? Or?
Yeah, I do. Now, you mentioned the word ionic exchange, and in a water softening system, certain materials are being added to the water to affect just that. What is an ionic exchange? It is literally a transfer of little particles of energy, you will, from one to another, but it's causing a change and a breakdown, so to speak, of the elements that are present. It's breaking things down, the quote unquote soften things. And that's because the water has become hard. It started to misbehave. It's begun to become lethargic and lay all over and drop onto the pipes and things and gunk things up. And first of all, vortex generators, which are not filters, but they also are affecting ion exchange. See, ion exchanges are happening when vortexing is happening. It's a phenomenon, it's a natural event where particles are actually being exchanged as well. And many other things are happening too, but it's being done without having to add anything. It's using the forces of nature to actually pull certain things apart, okay, certain elements and compounds and particles, but it's also creating new charged particles, which are now available to donate electrons as needed, but it also produces protons too. It's something we are not doing. We're not dictating it. We're simply creating the event, and these effects occur naturally. And what we see happening in the beginning, I'll say this, our hope was when we saw that what we thought was and looked upon as hard water and all that accumulation, when we saw it, first of all, not only stop, but then reverse itself, we were thinking or hoping, I guess, that, well, all that badness had just gone away, that all those elements had just disappeared. And a vortex generator is not getting rid of anything. It's essentially redistributing everything equally. It's balancing on an electrical ionic basis. It's restoring that balance, and it's also the forces which keep those elements in suspension, and it also helps them. I will say that I have theorized And the theory seems to be being backed up that vortexing creates electrochemical changes in the water without electricity in the sense of being plugged into a wall, and also without adding any chemistry. It's done purely through this cyclonic and very powerful motion and the forces that occur when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and that's what we've witnessed over here. You know, the people that have put them on in hard water areas have definitely noticed a reduction in a reduction or elimination of any scale in their showers and things like that, because not because the amount of minerals in the water have decreased, it's because the water's now holding those minerals properly in suspension, and so they're not sticking to things, you know. And there's just so many different benefits that a vortex generator brings. One, the longevity of your appliances. You know, calcification inevitably means a shorter life for your appliances. Secondly, the cost of heating that water is more significant when that water's in a lazy state and when there's calcium all over the heating elements, which is resolved with putting a vortex generator on. The one the ladies love is softer skin and nails. So, you know, the hair and the nails, oh, my hair is so much better. You know, I've got one customer, she's in Melbourne, said to me, you know, she did the combination with the whole home filter and the vortex device, she said, and she's got a property out on a farm where they collect rainwater. She said, Jody, the water at home, I'm not going to say it's better than using rainwater to wash myself in, but she said it's equally as good. And, you know, that's the real testament to just what a difference you can make to average city water.
Well, it's one of the things.
Yeah, the other.
Go ahead.
Sorry, mate. You way you go.
I was just going to say that as you're talking about calcium, we think about the bad behavior when calcium drops out. And it's probably other things that are dropping out too, because if these elements are dropping out and accumulating in the pipe, it's because the forces that would keep them in suspension are simply no longer there. They're not in effect. They fall out. However, the other part of this that we don't think about often is that it also means that the water is not delivering those elements to the end user. Now, water is the carrier of many, many things. I mean, all of our elements, all of the minerals, the vitamins, and all those things that we are really needing in order to be healthy are carried and delivered, transported in and through water. And if those elements are dropping out of suspension in our pipes, it means they're not getting where they actually are to be in order to maintain health. Especially, this also applies particularly in, well, frankly, every place that life is involved. But when we're talking about farming and where you're growing and you're talking about the health of your plants or your animals, you know, oftentimes it's easier to talk about their health than it is our own. So let's talk about theirs, okay? And, you know, we can extrapolate. But it means that an investment that is made in soil amendments and things like that is, a lot of it is being wasted if the water itself doesn't have, I'm just going to say, the mojo to hold it in suspension and get it to its destination. And when calcium is dropping out, that's what's happening.
You know, and one of the other things, we comparison between should I use a water softener, you know, or should I consider a vortex device? You know, there's so many advantages that I think it's worth us touching on those now. You know, for a water softener requires a power source. There's ongoing maintenance, so you need to be putting salt in that system, and it needs to be serviced. The other thing too is the brine water, because it uses salt to catch or to flush the media. You know, the environmental impact of putting salty water or the brine water back down the pipe is horrific. You know, it's a really unnatural thing to do. And if I remember rightly, a couple of 3 years ago, California were talking about banning water softeners, and I don't know whether they did or they didn't. The other thing too is that, you know, for people with any kidney issues at all. Water that goes through a water softener needs to go through a reverse osmosis system before you drink it, because it's now high in sodium. The other thing too is that it needs to be placed somewhere where you can draw water off for your plants. You know, water that's been through a water softener is no good for feeding your plants. So, you know, it's a logistical nightmare with ongoing maintenance issues, as opposed to a Vortex generator, which is zero maintenance once it's installed. The water that will come through the taps in a more energy efficient and, you know, it's energy efficient. It's just got more energy in it. Like it's in a more bioavailable state for your body to use it. You know, my partner, when we first got together, she was living in Broome where the water's terrible and it's hot. It's really hot up there. You know, it's like in the hundreds a lot, and really humid. You know. And she went from drinking 7 litres or 7 quarts of water a day to, when she started drinking Vortex water, to drinking 3.5, because the water was more effective and more efficient in what it was doing. So, you know, she thought that was a fantastic bonus. But, you know, on places in hard water cities, you know, soft or hard water, people that have whole home Vortex devices, they notice a difference in their gardens. You know, the amount of water that, you know, I got one lady in Perth that she says, well, I've wound my retic back 66%. She's using 1/3 of the water that she used to for doing her lawns in the garden. And she said, my garden's never been better. So, you know, there's stacks of benefits. Less water, there's no wastewater, there's no ongoing maintenance. You know, it really is, to me, it's a no-brainer. And I suppose I should do a little sheet so people can see all the benefits just lined up side by side. In fact, I'll commit to doing that in the next 24 hours.
There you go. Well, I will have to say that why these devices worked was a mystery for some years. I mean, we had opinions, and the more we were around them, the more we continued to study. I mean, we haven't stopped studying the phenomenon now, like say, for 10 years, and our other partner many, many years longer than us. But ultimately, the more we stayed around, the more we started to appreciate what was actually happening, or should I say, the ability to explain it, because some of it, but results always spoke. You mentioned how your partner drank less water. That was one of the first things that I saw 10 years ago with a raw dairy in Arizona, where they put Vortex units on the farm. And the very first thing that was significant, that was actually very noteworthy, they had 135 head of cattle, and their water consumption in July in Arizona went down about 40%. They drank about 40% less water. I mean, we're talking a significant amount reduction in the heat of the summertime. So the water is changed very clearly. It may come from the same source, but it's definitely in a different state. We appreciate now very clearly that the state of the water actually matters. There was a Professor Rostam Roy, who was a material scientist at Penn State University, and he would affirm time and time and time again, structure is what he says, means everything. Everything else that you could say is poppycock to some extent, but structure means everything in terms of the state of the water. Now, we talk in terms of vortexing. We don't talk too much about structure, but structure is the result of something else. It's the result of vortex motion, vortex phenomena. When a vortex is created and a vortex event is created, it causes motion, it causes many things to occur, that would actually create particles that will cause others to be torn apart. It will cause a rearrangement and recombination of molecules, breaks things up, some of which that are harmful in the state that they're in. But once they're broken up, they will reassemble in ways that are natural and normal to the assemblage of what's present. And these are done naturally and as automatically as if you had a whole bunch of material that was magnetic and got it all together close by, and boom, it could have been put together in some kind of convoluted way, but it will reassemble in a way that's natural and normal to everything that's there. We don't have to think about it. That's one of the wonderful things about starting to appreciate the forces of nature, how nature works, and we can actually start to relax and not think we're doing this all. We're just creating the space where it gets done. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, create an environment for nature to do the work.
Yep. There you go. So yeah, relative to softening water, vortexing will eliminate the phenomenon that is generally referred to as hard water. Whether it makes the water soft or not, hard water may have been the misnomer, okay? The vortex water is producing enough ionic particles to literally start to pick off all of that stuff that had been sitting around on the sides and to put it back in suspension and actually begin to just take it out and let it continue on its journey to where it was intended to go in the first place. That's one of the things. The other thing that you were mentioning about using salts and other any kind of chemicals to quote unquote cause the water to soften, in other words, to stop its bad behavior. First of all, you're not affecting really the state of the water by doing so. So you're actually making water that is lethargic more so because you're putting more stuff in it, for one thing. And yes, some type of chemical reaction is occurring, but ultimately, the water is certainly not healthy. It's not, and I say healthy, it's no better able to be penetrating. You can be bathing, you can be showering with this water, and we can drink water or consume water and not be hydrated sufficiently by it. We can take it in and not eliminate it well enough. People call it water retention. Those conditions are also impacted by water's permeability, by water's slipperiness. It's something called surface tension, the strength of the bonds that those molecules are gripping each other with. Its surface tension are the bonds that allow for a mosquito to light onto a surface of water and walk around. And so if the bonds are great enough, this mosquito can walk around, it can lay its eggs on it, and you say the water is still enough, it can do all those things. If the surface tension has been changed, which does occur when you vortex the water, surface tension is lowered. So in a situation, just like talking about that mosquito, if you vortex the water that a mosquito was used to being able to land on and walk around and do a jig and lay its eggs, as soon as it lands, it's going to sink. It's not going to be able to. That's simply the reduction in surface tension. And when you look at that in the context of inside of an organism, of a body, for that matter, there can be many, many tiny, very almost microscopic openings and passageways that with higher surface tension can be obstructed, whereas with lower surface tension, the water is able to get through. And it's also energetic. It's bringing its charge with it. And now it's able to open things up. This is how people or plants are able to be hydrated much more effectively with vortex water, where as when they're using water that's been on the ground, or it's been city water, or even well water that's been sitting, it's still been sitting around. People get hard water behavior from their well water. Because generally it's, for the most part, much less dynamic than once we get it going, and then you take it through that vortex action. Simply moving the water body up through a pump and in mass does not create vortex action. It's a mass, and it's not much different than it was. It's still chaotic. But you start causing these changes, these movements, these spins, these spirals, which also create these tremendous changes in pressure differentials, temperature differentials within that volume. Now we have some major changes in state happening. So,
all right, is that us done today for water softening and vortex devices?
Yeah, that's water softening. Yeah, to sum it up, vortexing will create water that's much more viscous, much more flowing, much more penetrating, and not subject to
hydrate. It's more hydrating.
Oh,
in
yeah,
simple terms, it's more hydrating.
More hydrating for sure, and not subject to dropping its content. Remember, water is a carrier of the elements that actually contribute to your health, your plant's health, your animal's health. I have seen so many people who have done real scientific tests where they get their vortex generator, and then they put they get some drinking dishes for their animals, and they take one with their regular water, their current water, and then they run the other through the vortex unit and put the two down. And within a matter sometimes of hours, sometimes in a couple days, all of a sudden the only one that gets drank out of is the one that has vortex water. The animals can tell the difference. We've got to a place where we need instruments to tell us something, and those instruments are only as sensitive as the ones who are able to make it that way. So we're not trusting our own knowing, and fortunately animals still trust theirs. So they can guide us if we're willing to see what they're telling us and showing us.
Perfect.
All right. So anyway, that's our thoughts. Once we get started, you want to just kind of linger, but I think it's the best thing this is something, it's on one subject. We will put this up, and then Jody and I will come back, and let's do this on some kind of regular basis. We will do this, okay? So
all right.
Anyway, thank you for watching, and until next time, and I will say, send your questions. You get this, you like it, you got more questions. Yeah. Send a question to info@presidentwater.com. Let us deal with it, okay? That'll be a good thing too. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you now.